Coming up in This Week in Computer Hardware, Intel Coffee Lake benchmarks, Google Pixel 2, Windows Mixed Reality, USB 3.2, Ryzen price cuts, and more. It's all coming up next on TWiCH.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiCH.
Bandwidth for TWiCH is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 435, recorded October 5th, 2017. Coffee Lake, the AMD Intel battle is brewing.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by iFixit, the free online repair manual for everything. Before you start your next build or fix, head over to ifixit.com/twit to snag the fully loaded Pro Tech Toolkit for only $59.95. And check out their array of high-quality parts, tools, and guides. And by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Home plays a big role in your life. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. Lets you apply simply and understand the entire mortgage process fully so you can be confident that you're getting the right mortgage for you. Get started at rocketmortgage.com/twitch.
Welcome to TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, TWiCH weekly show that aims to bring you the most useful news, information, how-to, tips, and mayhem involving desktop, mobile, PC, hardware, Macintosh, love, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful world of Android and iOS mobile. I'm Patrick Norton, joined as always by Mr. Ryan Shrout, who has, I understand, been eyeballs deep in the world of Coffee Lake.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I have. Yeah. It's one of these really.
Processor.
It is. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Thank you. You have summed up the review very well. No, that's not fair. That undersells it quite a bit. Yeah, let's just jump right into it. So Coffee Lake we've been talking about for a long time. And last week we actually saw the full reviews come out, right? Or not, I'm sorry. Right. Last week or 2 weeks ago we saw the specifications come out. The list price, clock speeds, core counts, all that type of stuff. And it was pretty interesting then. Now that we've been able to test performance, there's a couple of interesting things that come about from it, right? So Coffee Lake is essentially it's the same architecture that exists on Kaby Lake, right? The IPC is the same, the microarchitecture is the same, no changes really occur there. So it would actually be fair to call this like Kaby Lake 2 or Kaby Lake R, like they did on Kaby Lake Refresh, like they did on the mobile side.
Kaby Lake
I think
S.
one of the reasons they didn't do that was because you have to have a new chipset and motherboard than traditional Kaby Lake parts, right? So if you get an 8700K, which is the new top end of the mainstream parts, then you can't use a Z270 board. You have to use Z370. The reasoning for that is there's actual pin-out electrical differences between these processors in order to power the 6 cores a little bit more directly and allow for overclocking and all that type of stuff. So there is a technical reason for it. It doesn't make it suck less for consumers who bought into the 270 platform, you know, in the last 10 months, 8 months, right? Which since as long as it's been out. But that's just what it is. But if you look at that, we've got the table that shows specifications up there of the 6 new processors they announced. The 8700K is the flagship. It's now 6 cores instead of 4 cores. Hyperthreading gives it 12 threads instead of the 8 threads of the 7700K. Clock speeds go up by about 200 megahertz on the turbo boost side. You get more cache. You go from, I think, 8 megs to 12 megs. Yeah, you do, because you get 50% more cache along with 50% more cores. Still 16 lanes of PCIe, still in the same 90-ish, 95-watt TDP range. And the price is interesting at $359, meaning it's only $20 more than the MSRP of the 7700K has been, you know, up until basically the last 2 weeks when we knew that the 8700K was coming and prices started to drop a little bit. The other interesting ones that I like here is that both the Core i5s have 6 cores, 6 threads. So previously it was 4 cores, 4 threads. So you're getting 50% more there as well. The Core i3s are interesting too because those are quad core, non-hyper-threaded, right? So 4 true cores, whereas previous Core i3s were 2 core, 4 threads. Right, so you get the same number of threads, but you should see a pretty significant performance increase because of having 4 true cores as opposed to virtual logical cores in that regard. From a performance standpoint, The 8700K is 10 to 15% faster than the 7700K in pretty much all tasks, right? Or I'm sorry, let me take that back. In single-threaded tasks, right? So you get a clock speed boost across the board with this part. When you look at heavily multi-threaded apps like video encoding or 3D rendering, stuff like that, your Cinebench, your Pavre, your Handbrake, those tools, you're looking at actually 40 to 50% jump from
that's because of the additional cores.
Yeah, so you get 50% more cores, and that's pretty efficient. So you're getting pretty good scaling. So you get a jump there. Now, what's interesting for the 8700K in particular is that its performance in single-threaded apps still dominates over Ryzen 7, 1800X, 1700X, whatever else they have, right? It's like 30, 35% faster in those spaces. But in the multi-threaded, with one exception, all the tests we ran with one exception, the 1800X and the 1700X Ryzen 7 parts are still a little bit faster than the Core i7 8700K with 6 cores, 12 threads. So now you can look at it two ways. You can look at it and say, well, AMD is still the leader in these kind of mainstream multi-threaded applications or multi-threaded processors. Or you look at it from the Intel side and you say, wow, they're able to almost match performance with 6 cores compared to AMD's 8 cores, right?
Right. Interesting.
The 8400 maybe is more interesting to me because it is a $180 part. So it's like half the price of the 8700K. It's 6 cores, lower clock speeds, no hyperthreading. But I think I mentioned this last week when we talked about it. The 6 true cores versus a quad-core hyper-threaded part. So if you take the Core i5 8400 that launched today, you compare it to the 7700K from earlier this year, and you'll see that in multi-threaded workloads, those two parts are actually pretty close in performance. Just telling us that, if you look at Blender, for example, the 7700K is 4,500 seconds and the 8400 is 4,700 seconds, right? So those are big numbers, but the percentage difference is actually relatively small. And that's a $184 processor. So that's, again, half the price of what the 7700K actually launched at. So for people who want to build like budget systems, where the $180 price point is kind of what they're looking at for CPU instead of something like $360, it's actually pretty compelling option to look at, right? And it's same in gaming. It does really well in gaming. Doesn't really change the stance of Ryzen versus the Intel parts there, because the 7700K was already the fastest available for gaming PCs. The 8700K has more cores and more clock speed without changing the architecture.
Well, the fastest available for 1080p gaming PCs.
Yeah. And that's actually that's applicable to all resolutions, but it's greatly minimized as you increase your resolution, right? So 2400, 2560 by 1440, there's going to be some differences, but they're going to be much more muted, and at 4K, almost non-existent type of thing. Yeah. Right.
So these aren't gonna, you're not gonna, it doesn't seem like they offer a compelling performance improvement over the Ryzen 7 1700 for, say, the high-end system leaderboard, where you're looking at, $295.
No. Yeah, so it's interesting what AMD has done with this. Yeah, if you look at the processor pricing, interestingly, in the last 2 days, suddenly that $449 price point on the 1800X was suddenly $399, and the $359 on the 1700X was $299. And so I struggled a little bit writing this part yesterday or a couple of days ago even, but $449 has been where the 1800X has been selling consistently for the last several months, couple of months at least.
And suddenly $398.99.
Yeah, weird how that happens, right? And I've heard from a couple of people that these were temporary. I think even on Newegg, it's listed as a 48-hour sale or something like that. So I didn't really want to, even though it's the internet and nothing's permanent, make a semi-permanent statement about the value of one or the other on this flash sale type result. But if it stays those prices, we'll probably go back and make some of those changes, right? Because as it is now, at $399 and $299 as they sell today, they kind of perfectly sandwich the 8700K and still maintain really, really, really good performance per dollar metrics. I think Intel basically felt that their 7000 series, their Kaby Lake parts in this form factor were overrun a little bit by Ryzen, right? In the Ryzen 7 and then those price drops and the performance that they offered in multi-threaded apps. So the 6-core move makes a pretty significant difference. It doesn't blow away the competition, but Intel was very aggressive by essentially adding 50% more cores, more clock speed, while keeping the price almost the same. And that's a kind of a non-Intel move, something we wouldn't have seen over the last several years before the Ryzen parts from AMD were released. So this is all good news for everybody. It's almost like
you're suggesting that competition in the marketplace allows the consumer to have a small advantage vis-a-vis purchasing the best value and encouraging vendors to decrease their prices and maximize the performance an individual can purchase for their dollars.
Oh man, I could never say such a thing. No. I mean, clearly that's the case, right? Like this is what we always wanted the whole time. This is what was so great about the GPU wars for as long as they've been going on.
At least until, Ethereum and Bitcoin mining.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. You're right. So it's not all roses for Intel here. Like the Z370 motherboards are fine. They're good boards. They offer good features. It's another opportunity for Asus, MSI, and Gigabyte and those guys to create new SKUs. I think this would have been a clear home run if they ran on Z270 motherboards, right? If you had this existing ecosystem, you had this existing install base of people who could suddenly now buy 6-core processors, that I think you'd be a lot more likely to see some of that or a lot of that upgrade, right? Now, as it stands now, this is basically, if you are building a new system, Kaby Lake and Z270 are old news unless they turn out to be incredibly inexpensive in the coming weeks. And this is what you should buy, right? So it'll be interesting, right? Oh, I'm sorry. This is what you should buy if you're going to go Intel. But it's still a good conversation and debate to have between what Coffee Lake is and what Ryzen 7 and even Ryzen 5 at 6-core parts really can be. So it closed the gap with AMD, and it was aggressive enough to either temporarily or forever change the prices of these Ryzen parts. So I say good on them. It's compelling stuff.
We like compelling stuff.
Yeah.
Now, if we could just get a GTX 1070 back under $500. Oh no, wait, here we go.
Yeah, no joke. No joke.
$425 for a GeForce GTX. Oh, hey, $399.89. 2 left in stock for a Zotac GeForce GTX 1070 Mini 8 GB. This is good. These are, and then the prices get up to $470 and $492. Huh. I feel like the GPU prices are starting to stabilize again. In any case.
I hope that's the case.
Oh my goodness. Windows 10 Fall Creators Update, October 17th. Samsung joins Acer, Dell, HP, and Lenovo in offering a virtual reality or an augmented reality headset or virtual reality headset, or Windows mixed reality, I guess is what we're calling it now. But if you have been eagerly anticipating getting your Windows mixed reality experience on, Samsung is now, they're trying to make gear for every possible AR or VR experience that they can get licensing for. I feel comfortable in saying, but October 17th, that's coming, the Fall Creators Update, and we're not going to see Dell's gear until late in October. Haven't heard back from Lenovo. It'll be interesting to see what ships with these and what you can do with them. But Samsung joins the offerings on that one. I'm curious. I'm very, very curious. I'm also very curious to see what happens when I update to the Fall Creators update on the 17th, or as close to as I can get. The other crazy thing that happened this week is the ThinkPad essentially turned 25, and they revealed a retro ThinkPad for the 25th anniversary of the ThinkPad. Which I thought was, they call it retro classic. It's about $1,900, so it is not like many retro things we've seen over the years. It is not a particularly inexpensive retro thing. But to commemorate 25 years of ThinkPad, we're paying homage to some of the original aesthetics of that first model while maintaining the powerful performance and mobile agility of today's configurations. So as you use this special anniversary edition to accomplish your next big thing, consider how far we've traveled together along the road to different. So, and you're talking about 1992 for the original one. 100 million ThinkPads sold since then.
Let me call up Alan. Can you come here for a second? They sent us a replica,
the giant box.
Of the original
which sadly
ThinkPad.
Did not have the ThinkPad 25 inside of it.
Correct. It had a piece of chocolate with a keyboard on it. It's there it is. But it does kind of put things in perspective, right? Like,
right.
This is the thickness of the original ThinkPad, right? Like,
I think it's a little bigger than the original ThinkPad. I think it's puffed up a little bit.
Said it. I thought they said it was the same specifications because it weighed 8.3 pounds.
Oh, goodness.
And then they told you to like compare
them
that
being
to
that
something
big.
like the.
I remember them being almost that big.
It seems very portable. You just tuck it under your arm and carry it around with you as you go, right?
I don't know. I love the fact that the ThinkPad 25. Like the 7-row keyboard, the blue enter key, special logo, the red pointing stick, and then something that's incomprehensible for a 1992 laptop user, which is, GeForce 940 MX, Core i7 7500U, 13.9 hours of battery life, a 14-inch 1080p display. I will say it's going to be considerably faster.
Yeah. Actually, I think they had some metrics in there. I will say, from a purely like reviewing as a notebook stance, the specifications are not impressive for that, right? So it's using a 7th gen instead of like the 8th gen quad core part. It's got a 940 MX instead of having an updated like GeForce MX 150. A little disappointed in that stuff, but I guess it's a little bit more about the aesthetic on that stuff. They do say they're comparing the original ThinkPad laptop, which was the ThinkPad 700C, 11.7 inches by 8.3 inches by 2.2 inches, and weighed nearly 8 pounds. Compare that to the X1 Carbon today. It's only 30% of the thickness, 3 times lighter, has 347,000 times faster transfer rates, and 1,024 times more memory than the 700C. So, yeah, there you go.
Things have changed. Things have.
And they say at the end of this letter, see you in 2042. So, for the 50th anniversary. I mean, look at that guy. Oof.
That was a beast.
Interesting.
But an amazing beast.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. This week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by iFixit. If you're familiar with iFixit like we are, you should be familiar with iFixit. They really like to take stuff apart and teach people how to fix things. Constantly. They are constantly posting teardowns and repair videos for popular devices. The Galaxy S8, iPhones, the Switch. If you want to know what's inside your device, if you want to know how to fix it, iFixit is your resource. And they're leading the charge in the electronics repair tools industry with their iconic black and blue ProTech toolkit. I have one. My wife has one. I have one for the kids. I have one at the office. I have one at home. I love the ProTech toolkit. If you go to to look at the ProTech toolkit in iFixit store, they explain how each piece of the kit was meticulously designed. It's really well thought out. You're not going to find a higher quality toolkit like this on the market. It's sleek, but don't let the design fool you. It's got brawn. It's got beauty. It's got really nice, solid, well-built steel bits and tools tough enough to handle any repair or mod you throw at them. And it's only $59.95. Everything's wrapped up in a really nice tool roll that makes it compact and easy to store. The 64-bit driver kit is kind of the heart of this thing. It's got all the bits you need for just about any DIY electronics repair. It's a case that keeps your bits organized, and it's easy. You know which bits out. You know which bits are in. You open it up. You flip it over. The bits aren't going to fall out, and you can basically drop stuff inside that lid there as your screws as you're assembling it apart, or pull the bit kit off of the backing, the roll, and you've got a magnetic tray right behind there, a big chunk of magnetic material that'll help you keep that magnetic mat. It's going to help you keep from losing your components or your screws. A nice swivel top magnetic precision driver, a flexible extension that's also magnetic for those hard to reach screws like inside the back of the overhang of a lot of PC cases. They got plastic opening tools like spudgers and picks to help you poke and pry things open, a suction cup with a really nice fancy handle that's going to help you remove display assemblies when you're repairing your phone. They got iFixit's own rubber handled Jimmy pry tool, which is a really sweet way to crack into a device that just doesn't want to open. Nice, flexible, kind of springy blade on that one. ESD safe tweezers, metal spudgers, and if you're feeling old school, they got an ESD safety strap so you don't destroy your job with static shock, which is a big thing as we get to the winter months when the carpets start sparking everybody up. Best part, though, iFixit tools backed by iFixit's lifetime warranty, and you don't need to buy something to get iFixit's free repair resources. Check out over 25,000 free repair guides at iFixit.com. You don't have to buy something. Just go to iFixit.com. Do a search. You would be amazed at what iFixit's going to help you figure out how to fix. You want to tackle your next hack, fix, or build with the ProTech Toolkit? Visit iFixit.com/twit to snag the fully loaded ProTech Toolkit for only $59.95. Thanks, iFixit. It's amazing. I've used it to fix iPhones, an LG G4, to fix the loose screws on my laptop, to fix loose fasteners on a toilet, eyeglasses, placing parts in the dashboard of my truck, children's toys. Oh my goodness, the children's toys. It is an incredibly useful collection of tools. iFixit.com/twit. Get the fully loaded ProTech Toolkit for only $59.95. Like I said, thank you, iFixit. Keep doing the good work that you do. Google Pixel 2. Shannon was raging about this because there is no headphone jack.
Yeah.
I just want everybody to know that. On the upside,
seems like a fair complaint.
Mark. It's a fair complaint. DxO Mark gives it a score of 98, the highest rating they've ever given to a smartphone for camera quality, edging out the iPhone 8 Plus and the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 were tied in the DxO Mark image quality testing, but the Google Pixel 2 edges them out. I personally find the Panda design, the black and white design, kind of less than aesthetically desirable, but the camera sounds amazing. Yeah.
Do you worry that there's only a single lens, like that there's no, kind of zoom lens option that we've seen on, the iPhones and the Notes and the Galaxies and all that type of stuff?
I would like a zoom, but every time I use a zoom, I realize I would like more zoom than they actually have in the zooming device. If that makes sense. Yeah. It's a curious product, right? Because, there's been a lot of writing about what purpose the Pixel serves. Why does Google make hardware? And it's like, well, they make hardware with a pure Android interface for developers so that they have a standard for, the quality of the hardware and, the operating system as it should be experienced without a bunch of cruft, bolted onto it. Not to sound judgmental, but a lot of the stuff that vendors are doing to Android makes it really frustrating to use, in my humble opinion. And the relative number of Pixel phones sold is probably nowhere near in line with the amount of coverage that the Pixel phones get. But that's because Google wants to sort of set a standard for the people that develop on Android, but do not want to undermine its relationships with the hardware vendors that sell as many phones in a month as they sell in a year. So it looks like a nice phone. Shannon's going to be purchasing, or I think Shannon purchased one yesterday to do a review on tech things. We'll keep you posted on that. The other stuff that came out at Google's Hardware Festival, the Google Home Max, which is essentially, boy, that looks like a Sonos 5. By the way, Sonos now has Alexa integration and a new Sonos 1, which has a microphone built in for Alexa. But essentially, everybody said the Google Home sounded meh. So they came up with a Google Home that should sound better, pair of 4.5-inch woofers, custom tweeters for crystal clear highs. But the first thing they mentioned there, kids, is the acoustically transparent fabric on the front of the speakers. It's doing their smart sound thing where it's supposed to tweak the audio based on the room you put it in. And also apparently not just equalization for the room, but they're supposed to be manipulating the audio or fine-tuning the audio based on what you're listening to, which will either be really, really awesome or really, really not awesome. They also announced the Google Home Mini, the Pets Rock, but or the Fabric Pet Rock. It looks like it looks like a pincushion. Which makes me afraid that in certain households somebody may actually stuff a pin into that. We do a lot of sewing in my house, but that's essentially a $50 Amazon Echo competitor. Google Daydream View, which is their new VR headsets, designed for your couch, not for your bag.
I looked at that quickly. What changed on it? Is it just bigger?
Man. Your guess is as good as mine.
I was reading stories about it. I was out of town, so I didn't get to pay attention to the live stream if there was one. But like, I don't know. It still works with a Galaxy S8 Plus, Note 8. Overall design hasn't changed. I
think Adi Robertson over at The Verge summed it up pretty well. Google's overall goal, recreating last year's carefully engineered mobile headset, undoing a few mistakes, and making its individual parts a little bit nicer. And they throw in like $40 worth of games on it. So Pixel 2, Pixel, Galaxy S8, S8 Plus, Galaxy Note 8, Zenfone AR, Axon 7, Mate 9 Pro, and the Moto Z and Z2 are the ones listed. You will now get coordinated. The remote will be coordinated in colors with the Daydream View. October 19th launch, $99. The inexpensive way to enter the world of VR. And, shifting gears, I think we've kind of beaten the Pixel sounds nice. It sounds kind of like every other Premier phone, except it's from Google. I'm curious to hear what the reviews are like. I'm curious to see what Shannon says about it. It's a flagship Android phone. It's got a metal body, Snapdragon 835 processor. I'd like to see a little bit better battery life because they're saying up to 7 hours of battery life, but they're talking about 7 hours of battery life after 15 minutes of charging. 1.4. Go ahead.
I wonder a little bit about the quick charge stuff, how much value people put on that, right? Like, I don't know a lot of time. I'm not the kind of person who carries my charger with me, like the plug-in wall charger. I'm much more likely to have a battery in my bag or something like that. So I don't know if you get the same charge time advantages as you do if you have the, comes in the box wall adapter and plug it in. Now, maybe that's just me. When I travel, I see tons of people that just like reach in their bag, pull out their phone charger, plug it into a socket at the airport or at the convention center or at the hotel or whatever, and charge for 10 minutes at a time while they're waiting. So I guess maybe that is something that's fairly common. I just don't do it. And I would still rather prefer, as you are saying, better battery life in general, as opposed to ways to charge faster. But
no, I'm with you. It's, I think it all comes together. There are often times when I wish my iPhone charged faster. I would also wish it had better battery life. I carry around a battery with me. You carry around batteries with you. But to have the option of to top that off quickly in 15 or 20 minutes, it seems smart to me. The Pixel 2 is a 5-inch AMOLED screen, 1920 by 1080, which means that's part of what's giving it the battery life or decent battery life. The Pixel 2 XL, 2880 by 1440, a 6.0-inch POLED screen. Security updates for up to 3 years.
Okay.
Android 8.0 Oreo. Well, if you scroll down, it says Pixel software and security updates for 3 years. So, that's a good thing. USB-C,
I don't know
of
if I've
course.
ever seen that called out before.
I think maybe they're trying to, gosh, I don't know, address the issues with updates for Android phones.
Fair.
Pixel 2. Yeah. Pixel 2 starts at $649. The Pixel 2 XL is going to run you $849. That's like for an unlocked version. 128 gigabytes adds you another $100 on top of that. So the maxed out Google Pixel 2 XL is going to run you, with 128 gigabytes, is going to run you somewhere in the neighborhood of $849. $949. So it's up there in the price. Preferred Care adds another $129 onto that. I'm glad that the entry level is 64 gigabytes. But that extra 128 gigabytes of storage is gonna cost you $100. So, oh wait, did I do the math on this right? 6-inch Pixel 2 XL, 128 gigabytes.
Only available 64, 128, $100 bucks. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I had not finished clicking a button, so the total wasn't correct. So, lots going on in Google land. Yeah. We mentioned earlier. The Coffee Lake, the 8700K, and the Core i5 8400. Alan got hands on with Intel's VROC, which I would assume is a storage technology. And it looks so 19. I see that picture and I think it looks like loading memory onto, PCI boards.
Yeah,
15 years ago.
It's not far from that.
It looks so familiar. It's basically NVMe RAID.
It is, right? So here's what's interesting about it, right? So first of all, it's worth noting this is not actually officially out yet. The Intel support for VROC, the driver is not publicly available, but we found a driver that supports it on some driver depot, right? Some other website that posts drivers, right? So there just happened to be an enterprise version that got out of Intel and was posted publicly that supported some of these features. Now, the reason I bring that up is like there could be some changes. There could be some changes to what the consumer costs are or what the platform design will be like or how it integrates. Like right now, remember when we talked, if you remember VROC at all, you probably remember us talking about the need to have a hardware key to enable it, right? To get higher different types of RAID. Like if you wanted to do RAID 5, you had to have a key. The way it's currently set up is you can do RAID 0 without a key, RAID 1 with a standard key, and RAID 5 with a premium key that you have to pay for. Again, Intel hasn't really announced what these prices are going to be or who they sell them for. If you look around, you can find these keys, and like the standard one's like 80 and the premium one's like 120 or something like that. So they're not cheap devices. So basically, we had the X299 motherboards, we had the platform. Asus had sent us the Hyper M.2 by 12 card, which is essentially a PCIe card that allows you to plug in 4 PCIe NVMe type devices into it, and it uses a technology called bifurcation that the platforms support, and actually both Threadripper and X299 boards support this, where it takes 1 by 16 slot and physical electrically by 16, and when you plug in this card with 4 by 4 PCIe cards in it, it just basically reports to the system as 4 by 4 cards, full bandwidth and capacity, right? Okay. So you're getting the benefit of plugging this into 4 sockets, in other words, right? And then You go into the BIOS, you can set up the array like you would a SATA array, essentially. You can do this. It's bootable if you do it that way, we found out. You can make it a secondary device. You get into Windows, you install this RSTE, the Rapid Storage Technology. The E stands for Enterprise Software. You can set up your array in that configuration. And it kind of all just works right now. Which is a little surprising. It's good, but it's surprising that Intel hasn't launched this yet, right? They're not out there kind of promoting this yet. It leads me to believe that either internally they have some fundamental flaw or technical issue that we haven't seen yet that needs to be fixed, or integration across the motherboards needs to be integrated on BIOSes that haven't really been stabilized yet, or maybe they're debating the cost structure of VROC, right? Like the fact that you could do RAID 1 and 5 on a Z270 board, admittedly through a slower interface, with less drives, and now they want to charge it for the X299 consumers. I don't know. I don't know the reasons for why it's not out yet, other than it's not.
It's not out yet.
Also note that the difference between VROC and Z270 is on the Z270, when you do NVMe RAID, you're doing it through the chipset. So you're kind of bottlenecked by that DMI connection, that connection between the chipset and the CPU, which is only 4 lanes of PCIe 3. When you do VROC, you're connecting these drives directly to the CPU itself. So you have one less hop of latency in theory, and you also have way more bandwidth and way more potential maximum throughput of the device. So Alan obviously has done a lot of testing on this and looked at a bunch of different aspects of performance, both for latency and then raw throughput. And what you'll see is, let me see if I can find, let's look at 128 kilobyte sequential, which is, I think, is on the first performance page. And you see some of these maximums. And he tested it with 4 512 gig 960 Pros and 4 32 gigabyte Intel Optane modules, right? The Optane memory modules, like they're only 16 or 32 gigs made for caching. But those are incredibly good for latency, so we just wanted to use those for that. So the impressive numbers come from the bandwidth throughput that you see on, scroll down a little bit more till you see 128 kilobyte sequential reads. I think it's one more down. Yeah, there you go. So that orange line all the way at the top gives you our peak throughput with 4 960 Pro. So we're just over 13 gigabytes per second of storage performance there, 13.2 gigabytes of performance, right? And that's with 4 drives. With 3 drives, you can hit 9.8. With 2 drives, you can hit 6.5, and 1 drive, you can hit 3.2. What's interesting about that is with Z370 chipset RAID for NVMe, you're limited to like 3.6, I think, 3.2 or 3.6 gigabytes per second total, regardless of how many SSDs you actually have in the system, because you're limited to the bandwidth of the DMI. With this, adding in just a second 960 Pro, you're getting 6.5 gigabytes per second of throughput. So you're well above what the performance level of that Z270 actually is. And then obviously you can go to 3 or 4. And I think in theory, you might even be able to go beyond that, but we just don't have enough drives or another riser card really to test it as well. So we're waiting for more of that stuff to show up. The Optane drives are obviously better at latency. One of the things that was kind of interesting is the Z270 platform exhibited better latency than the X299 platform on these, which was a little bit of a surprise, but it's impressive tech, right? It's, if you want and or need kind of the most extreme high performance storage capability, it's this, and it's the Threadripper, the AMD announced Threadripper NVMe RAID, although we still have some consistency issues with it that we're trying to work through with them. Both Intel and AMD are trying to open up those possibilities for you, right? Like they're giving us flexibility that we did not have before. And it was one of always the frustrating things about Z170, 270, 370, your RAID kind of being behind the chipset, only having 16 lanes of PCIe on the processor itself kind of limits what you could do with really, really high performance storage. And when you get processors like Threadripper that have 64 lanes of PCIe, or Skylake X that has 44 lanes of PCIe, you want to be able to utilize that for these types of use cases, and they're finally opening it up. So I would go check out the review if you're just really interested in that storage nerd type stuff. It's super interesting. Like, keep in mind that it's just not all ready yet, and we probably don't recommend anybody integrate or use this today because of that. We would kind of wait for Intel to release the driver publicly, which seems like a good first step, and then release information about what the consumers are going to have to pay and what they should expect going forward if you integrate this. Because if you make this your bootable array, you're going to want to know what to expect from a stability and performance standpoint, and are you going to have to pay for it and all that type of stuff. So, but neat either way to check out. Plus, as you said, that card just kind of looks cool, I think.
There's nothing
you can buy
wrong
those
with
cards for just $80. I think they're out of stock now, but they were in stock earlier this week for like $80.
Nice.
So they're not incredibly expensive.
Not incredibly expensive, which makes them particularly attractive. You know what else is particularly attractive? A good deal on a mortgage. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. The mortgage experience, not keeping up with the times. Dated, needed a client-focused technological revolution, which is why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. It's really easy, folks. Rocket Mortgage gives you the confidence you need when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. It's really simple. It allows you to fully understand all the details, be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. It's convenient. The trusted partners allow you to share your financial information with Rocket Mortgage at the touch of a button. It's powerful. It doesn't matter if you're looking to buy your first home or your 10th, Rocket Mortgage is able to perform thousands of calculations in seconds. Based on your income, your assets, your credit, Rocket Mortgage can analyze all the home loan options for which you qualify and find the one that's just right for you. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Apply simply, understand fully, mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/twitch. That's rocketmortgage.com/TWiCH. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030. And we thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans for their supports. There you have it, people. Asus Z370 lineup. The Z370 motherboards are slowly, are they flooding out or are they trickling out for the Coffee Lake launch?
I think they're flooding out. I think much more than the processors tend to be. I think Newegg and Amazon are already out of stock on the CPUs, of course. I can tell you that the announcements are certainly flooding out because we had information from Gigabyte and Asus and MSI about entire new lineups. And really for these guys, they just use it mostly as an opportunity to introduce a new feature or two, and then update visual style. Right. So that Asus Maximus 10 there has notice at the top there, it only has 2 DIMM slots. Scroll back up just a little bit if you can. It only has 2 DIMM slots. Wow. And then the piece next to it there is the DIMM.2 slot, which is a riser card for 2 more PCIe NVMe SSDs, right? So it's kind of an interesting trade-off, right? They went with 2 DIMM slots, thinking, okay, you need to have 2 for dual channel, and how many people populate all 4? Maybe they have some telemetry on that, and they know that not many people are really populating all 4, so this is kind of a trade-off they were willing to do. That DIMM.2 slot previously, I think, first showed up on the X299 boards, I think, or maybe a 2nd-gen X99. So I'm curious to see how that integration looks. But there is a ton of stuff out there from Asus. Which one is that? So that's the Maximus 10 Apex that does that. Also, I don't know if you noticed that it has those cutouts on the side. Yeah, it looks like Asus is like they're cutting out the edges of the PCB to make it a little bit more styled. Yeah. I think it looks neat, actually, as long as they're not sacrificing, features and layout and design and stuff like that for it. The tough board does have 4 DIMM slots, so it is a little. It's going to differ. Looks like, just looking at that table at the bottom. The Strix Z370i, the Maximus 10 Apex. Those are the only 2 boards that decided to go with 2 DDR4 memory slots, and then they added in support for DIMM.2 as well, which is pretty interesting. And hey, don't forget that Maximus 10 Apex does have support for 4 RGB strips. 4 RGB strip headers on the motherboard itself. So if you like multicolored lights, they've got it. Oh, it also has the Quantia 5G networking controller on that board.
There you have it.
So that's pretty good too. Not 10 gigabit, 5 gigabit. So interesting stuff.
I agree 100%. Always good to have options. We mentioned earlier Ryzen price cuts. We're looking at like 20 to 25% on an AMD Ryzen 1700X or 1800X, as Ryan mentioned earlier. Possibly temporary on that. But that's a big deal. You're looking at $298, I think, right now on a 1700X. $294.99 with a cooler. So that's a pretty good deal. And a 1800X, as somebody who purchased out of pocket an 1800X, $398.99. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I kid.
Just think about you enabled everybody in the future, in the today market, to be able to buy this part. Then that's what you got to look at it. Look at it from the positive point of view.
We used to call it the Laporte effect, where he would buy something and the price would drop. Apparently when I buy something, the price drops too. It just takes a little longer. But no, I mean, it's a fantastic price, probably temporary. And as someone just tweeted at me, probably a response to Coffee Lake, which is fine. As long as we keep hammering on prices and making more power more affordable, I am delighted. USB 3.2. This is exciting because there's so much USB 3.1 activity right now. I think it's long overdue that we create an additional USB 3.0/USB-C spec to continue to confuse the entire known universe. But yeah, USB Implementers Forum, Tim Berry writes, recently published and made official the specs for the USB 3.2 standard, first introduced in near final form by the USB 3.0 promoters group back in July, which is great. It seems like there was not a lot of infighting on this. But basically, you're talking about the physical and logical techniques for getting data over physical USB cables, which are, quote, now all specified under their own standards, decoupled from the USB 3.2 data transfer specifications, up to 20 gigabits per second, approximately 2 gigabytes per second, using two 10 gigabit per second channels and the same signaling and 128-bit/132-bit encoding used by the USB 3.1. So basically, it's multiple lanes, and it's moving a ton of data. Specs supposed to be finalized by the end of year, and you'll see USB 3.2 controllers coming out in 2018. So if you are that person that moves the massive amounts of data and is always looking for a faster way to move it, this is the USB 3.2 you've been waiting for.
If you have cables that actually meet the USB IF spec, you don't even need to buy new cables for it, which is kind of nice. And there was a comment in our story on that said made the joke that so the universal serial bus now operates in a parallel mode. Although I think technically it's not parallel, it's two serial connections just running independently that then get recombined at the higher level, at the controller level. So but it is kind of interesting to think about it that way. So, but it's if I can keep existing infrastructure, although, who knows when devices that utilize this will actually come out, right? I think Jeremy made the joke on our podcast last night of, I can't wait until I have to write out motherboard specifications and talk about how many USB 3.2 Gen 1, USB 3.1 Gen 2, USB 3.1 Gen 1, and USB 3.0 ports they have. And I'm like, yeah, probably some USB 2.0 in that mix as well, just for backwards compatibility, and a PS2 port. So a little bit of everything.
Just to keep things real. Oh my goodness. One thought before we get to our last story of the day. I want to give a moment, if you will, for Paul Otellini, former Intel CEO. He passed away entirely too young at 66. He spent 40 years at Intel, was the first non-engineer to helm the company. Somebody I got to interview several times, and no matter how irritating my questioning or pointed my questioning, always had a smart, thoughtful, and genteel answer. And also, helmed the company through a tremendous amount of growth. Nice man. I don't know what he was like to work for, but as a reporter or a tech journalist, he was always very, very nice and very, very gracious to deal with. So our sympathies go out to his family and friends and the Intel community. And to shift gears, to grind gears, a ton of new devices from Roku. Not so much on the Roku Ultra, a couple of big changes. The Roku Streaming Stick and Roku Streaming Stick Plus, the Roku Express, and the Roku Express Plus, all get more powerful processors. They're claiming the Streaming Stick's like 50% faster. The Roku Streaming Stick Plus does 4K HDR, and they've moved the wireless comms out of the stick and into the cable, which makes for a bulky cable, but they're claiming like a 4x improvement in throughput, which is a big deal, in part because it's getting it out from behind the shelter of the television, and also probably because they have a lot more room to work with the antennas and the chipset for the Roku Streaming Stick Plus. Roku Ultra, fundamentally unchanged, but a bunch of new remotes now, or the Roku Ultra also gets the new remote that a bunch of the other devices get, which not only includes the headphone jack, but volume controls and power buttons, if you have been pining for that. And the Streaming Stick Plus, Jeremy Hellstrom notes, also come with a voice-activated remote if you are into the voice activation. And Roku OS 8 is coming out in October, November. They're going to roll that out box by box, region by region, I would presume. Will allow you to search for over-the-air TV results in its menu. If you have an antenna set up for that, or if you're running like Dish or Cox or AT&T, you can access them on your Roku. And then single sign-in, I think, for like 30 channels, which is something Apple TV's done, which is really, really nice. So you don't have to constantly enter in all the passwords should that happen. So, and, apparently if you're into stock prices, Roku stock prices keep going up. Good luck to them. I hope that now that the company is publicly owned, it will not impede on their ability to design excellent streaming boxes. So, not that I'm ever paranoid about privately held companies going public, but I am with good reason. So good stuff. PCPer.com is a place to find more of Mr. Ryan Shrout. Any particular reviews you want to call out? Anything coming up you want to tell us about?
Man,
that was a big sigh.
So it's one of those things where there's this huge rush of content that we pushed out, and then it's just like, okay, now what? And now I have to pick what's a priority. I think Ken's going to have some stuff from, he's over in Japan visiting with Lenovo, so he'll probably have some more on that 25th anniversary machine and any other news and items that come from that particular event. We will eventually have a story probably by next week that will look at the AMD NVMe integration on Threadripper, so we can kind of compare what these early look at VROC and the current shipping version of AMD NVMe RAID on Threadripper is. We'll probably have some of that too. And then I want to spend some more time. I didn't do much on the overclocking side with these new 8700Ks to see if it, or the 8400 with the kind of change in power delivery that supposedly the Z370 chipset offers, if we can get anything out of it. Early results were we got all 6 cores and 12 threads to run at 5.1 gigahertz, which was pretty good. But I don't know if we're at that limit or not. I haven't really looked around at other people's reviews either to see what they got. So hopefully we'll be able to eke a little bit more out of that.
Nothing wrong with a little eking. Man, we took a listen to Shure's SE215 earphones on TechThing this week. Shannon's got a nice guide to basically some of the apps that allow you to, it was an Android question, but most of the apps apply to both Android and iOS. Basically smartphone photography apps that make your photos better. Our favorite wire cutters, if you're kind of crazy and love to solder and snip. we have a recommendation there. And we had an interesting viewer question where they were trying to figure out how to continue to follow someone on Facebook without seeing the photos that person posts. So we have some thoughts and ideas on that. And that's all up at techthing.com or youtube.com/techthing. And I am in the process of testing 3 more wireless mesh networking versus some standalone routers. And I will talk about that next week, because right now my head's about to explode. With that, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to talk about 4K televisions, get a 4K television recommendation or some more information on how to calibrate your television speakers, I'm going to Rocky Mountain Audio Fest in the wee small hours of the morning tomorrow, which I'm very excited about. So if you see me in Denver, say hi, because I'll be looking for all the speakers. Go to avxcel.com, the podcast I host with Mr. Robert Heron, who knows everything about all the screens. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on Twitch this week in computer hardware. You can find more Twitch at twit.tv/Twitch. It includes all of the older episodes, information on how to subscribe, just who in the heck we are, and might I say a handsome-looking thumbnail of Mr. Ryan Shroud up there. And again, we record live every Thursday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific, and we thank each and every one of you for listening. At Ryan Shroud, at Patrick Norton on the Twitters, and hey, thank you again. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shroud.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.